On behalf of the Root and Branch here at the Israel Center in Jerusalem, it gives me great pleasure to introduce a very close and dear friend, Aaron Braunstein, who will be giving a talk tonight on his activities both in the, it was basically in the American
Foreign Services,
and Aaron's done amazing work for the, you have a Covenant Alliance?
Jewish Covenant Alliance. It's Jewish Mission to the Nations.
So Aaron, just before we begin, I want to give fondest regards from Lowell Gallen. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight, but Lowell started the Root and Branch. He's done amazing work here. And
he's been running it for about more than 20 years.
More than 20 years, and he sent his fondest regards.
Wonderful.
So Aaron, let me just ask, you were born in the States?
Born in the States, born in Brooklyn, New York. And in a few months, in 6 months from now, I'll be 80 years old.
A very young 80.
But actually, I feel more like 39.
Oh, well, you look good, and it's how you feel and what you do, and you're very productive. We see you at all the events here in Jerusalem, and
that's right.
You do amazing work. It's very interesting that, can you explain to or tell our listeners out there, how did you become involved in the State Department? I know you worked in the foreign aid program for the State Department.
Exactly.
But how did you advance, or how did you get the position in the State Department?
Well, it's very simple. I came back from studies overseas. I have my BA from the Hebrew University, class of '63. And then from there I went on to France, where I got a first master's in international relations from the Institute of Political Studies in Paris. And then I came back to the States and started looking around for one and other positions with the government, and was accepted into the USAID, the Foreign Aid Branch of the State Department. And I think the thing that most enticed the State Department about my background was that I was fluent in French. And the Vietnam War was just starting to build up in a serious way. The foreign aid program to South Vietnam was building up.
This was in the...
This was 1966. 1966. And they were looking to recruit people, junior officers, into the State Department that had French, because French was the international language of Vietnam. Vietnam having been a former French colony.
And where did you learn French?
At the University of Paris, the Institute of Political Studies, before I came back.
Before you went to France?
No, in France, in Paris.
Okay, just backtracking a little bit. Did you come from a Zionistic family that you decided to...
Yeah, it's a traditional Zionist family. I was always very attached to Israel. Our family was very attached to Israel. And I had been on the youth leadership program, the one-year youth leadership program in Jerusalem in 1955.
Oh, that's...
And that
7 years after the state was founded.
Just 7 years after the state was founded. If you had meat once a week, you were lucky in those days. And I'd always planned to come back to Israel. And in fact, I like to tell people that I made Aliyah twice. The first time in 1958, and in '59 I started I was first on a border settlement on the old armistice lines, if anybody remembers the Green Line. And then...
in which area was it?
It was in the Kiryat Gat area. Kiryat Gat area, right opposite Hebron.
Today in Kiryat Gat, Intel has a big, they've got a big production plant in Kiryat Gat.
Absolutely, yeah. It's now. Then it was just started. The town had started to develop in the mid-50s. '59, I came up to Jerusalem. Went up to Jerusalem, started my studies, graduated in '63 with my BA.
Was it in Hebrew?
Everything in Hebrew, yes.
And you were fluent in Hebrew?
Yes. Because I had been 1 year on the Machon, on the Youth Leadership Training Program, and then I was on a border frontier settlement for a year. I was also at Ulpan Etzion at the time, in the top class, just to polish up my Hebrew. So I had 2 full years of Hebrew under my belt before I started the Hebrew University.
Do you think this was also a contributing factor for the State Department, that you knew Hebrew as well?
No.
It was mainly French.
It was the French that
And
was the most thing.
made...
Although, I should add, just as a very curious thing, when a member of Israeli Knesset came to the States on a leadership grant, they were looking desperately for somebody who could be the escort interpreter for the Chaverat Knesset.
And you were?
And I was the one selected. I was already an officer with the State Department. I took a 2-week leave of absence from the State Department, joined Language Services, another branch of the State Department, Language Services, and guided the member of Knesset, Nuzhat Katzab, who came, was an Iraqi Jew, member of Knesset, and I guided her and her husband, who was head of the Arab department of the Histadrut at the time, and I guided them in around the United States for 2 weeks. It was a wonderful experience. I got to see parts of America I'd never seen before. So that was really my only use of Hebrew for the State Department.
And Aaron, can I ask, what was your decision? What influenced your decision to go study in France? You could have gone to England, to any Anglo-Saxon university, really. What prevented you to go actually study in Paris, in France?
Yes, well, back in the 50s and 60s, French was still very much an international language, a lingua franca at the time. And if I would come looking to work in international relations, with whatever agency, with whatever organization, having either French or Spanish would be a real advantage at the time. And in fact, I wound up working later in my career 8 years in French-speaking West Africa, Muslim French-speaking West Africa, Mali, Senegal, and Niger in West Africa. So the fact that I had French pretty much steered my career. The only 2 times I did not go to a French-speaking zone was a half-year detail to Peru, for which I was put into Spanish, intensive Spanish language training, and then Egypt. 5 years in Egypt. That was, if I may say, one of the few times that I escaped the burden of my being fluent in French. The experience, which in fact my first assignment, longer term assignment, was to Tunisia because of the French.
And what year did you go to Tunisia?
Tunisia, 70-71. And then from there I went to Niger in West Africa for 3 years, then back to the State Department in Washington, to USAID branch of the State Department for 12 years.
Can I ask, with regard to Tunisia, because Tunisia today is very much in the news, with the Arab Spring, with the it started, and it's very topical. Being as a Jew in Tunisia,
right.
Did you encounter any anti-Jewish feelings? Did people know you were Jewish, or did you manage to did you connect with the Jewish community when you were in Tunisia?
Yes, very much so. Well, first of all, the Tunisians that I worked with, the Foreign Service Nationals, as they're called,
did they know that you were Jewish?
Yes, absolutely.
And was there any negativity?
No.
You were accepted?
Accepted, an American diplomat, serving with the embassy.
Being Jewish was not a hamper, or it was it wasn't an issue?
No. And in fact, at the USAID mission at the time, there were half a dozen Jews working, who were all Foreign Service officers. In fact, my boss was also Jewish, just by coincidence. Not that we were paired off like that. But I will say something else, that being Jewish and having also lived in the Middle East before that, in Israel in particular, and specifically in Israel, gave me a sense of affinity with Arabs, with Muslims, that was not so easy for your typical American WASP, white Anglo-Saxon
You
Protestant.
knew the Middle Eastern culture.
I knew the Middle Eastern culture. I could relate to Tunisians on a one-on-one basis. I worked with them. My two assistants at the USAID were Tunisian Muslims. One was Muhammad Ali and the other one was Mohammed Abbasi.
Wow.
Two wonderful young men who helped me and our office with programming work.
And were you stationed in Tunis?
In Tunis itself, but interestingly enough, I lived in the suburbs of Tunis in a little town that hardly anybody has heard of, Carthage.
Oh, the famous
Carthage, the famous Carthage, which is a suburb of Tunis. It's about a 20-minute drive from the center of the city. A lovely area with a lot of archaeology right and left, and it was a wonderful time. Really.
And Aaron, I'm sure our listeners would be intrigued to hear your connection with the Jewish community back. This was back still in the 60s.
Yes.
In Tunisia.
Well, at that time.
Were there active shuls still in existence?
Yes.
Was there still a bit of a Jewish presence there?
That's right. In Tunis, mostly Tunis, and on the island of Jerba, which was going back 2,000 years, a Jewish community that was in Tunis, in Tunisia, before the Arabs arrived. And at the time, there were about 5,000 Jews. In fact, a Jewish colleague of mine in the Foreign Service, he met a Tunisian Jew there, and they got married.
Wow.
In Tunisia. Now the community has dwindled down to 1,000 or 2,000 only. But at that time, it was still...
It was active. It was active community.
Yeah, but 5,000. But I think the community in its heyday had been 50, 100,000 Jews.
Did you attend the services?
Yes.
Did you meet the heads of the community, the Jewish community?
Yes, all of that.
And were you warmly accepted within the community?
Yes, very much so. It was a very exciting experience. I mean, to go to the Ibn Ezra synagogue in Old Cairo and to see the place where the Geniza were found up in the attic of the shul.
So what year did you go to Egypt?
Egypt in 1990. And that was a whole story, which I'm going to be talking about this evening. But I want to tell you also a little bit about the Jewish Covenant Alliance.
So
we can do Egypt first.
We're going to just a little bit about your time spent in Egypt in the 60s.
Right. Egypt in the 90s.
In the 90s.
1990 to 95. I arrived just after the start of sanctions against Iraq because of its invasion and annexation of Kuwait. People remember. And in January 91, when we were there, the war started. And the whole story about that, which I'll be talking about. And involved with some of the diplomacy at the time, dealing actually with foreign assistance to the very large Egyptian family planning program, which was a very exciting time. It was starting to have positive results. Birth rates were coming down, not so much in the deep rural areas, but definitely in the urban centers. I was there for full 5 years.
And
working with Egyptian counterparts and Egyptian staff.
Likewise in Tunisia, in Egypt, did people know that you were Jewish?
Yes.
And you never had any
never was any problem about being Jewish. In fact, we had several, also like in the embassy in Tunisia, we had several Jews in the embassy in Cairo. which, by the way, is America's largest overseas mission in the world. The total foreign service staff and those who were on detail from other agencies of government was 500 officers. Huge contingent.
I remember I was in Cairo in the late 90s over Hanukkah, and they opened the shul in downtown Cairo.
And on Adley Street.
And that's right, a beautiful shul, a magnificent shul.
Yes, indeed.
They opened it, I think, every year on Hanukkah. Chabad came, and there were quite a few members from the American University and from the American Embassy.
Yes.
Jewish members of staff, and actually brought non-Jewish friends, colleagues, to come to the synagogue to witness the service.
Absolutely.
And I remember that very fondly, and we were very warmly accepted in the synagogue there in downtown Cairo. So this is the late 90s.
With some Egyptian guards outside to make sure security would be upheld.
It was good, and we felt very warmly accepted.
I'll tell you something else. I was there, I and my wife and our son, who was then 7, 8 years old, 5 years old when we arrived. We had an official Seder every year for 5 years, organized by the Israeli embassy in Cairo. And I was in charge of recruiting all the non-Israeli Jews that we could find.
That's amazing.
And we had it in a main hotel in Cairo, a couple of hundred people for the Seder every year. Of course, with Egyptians waiting on the tables with us, and I'll talk more about it.
It really brings the Seder
Absolutely.
in Mitzrayim, in Egypt,
to have a Seder in Egypt is
that's
is
unique
an exciting
experience. That's a unique experience.
Absolutely.
Wow. So, how long were you in the State Department?
30 years. Full 30 years. Took early retirement at age 58, and I've been busy ever since.
And from the State Department, did you come to Israel?
Straight to Israel. Right. My wife and son were already here. I went back to the States for a couple of months to phase out, go through the retirement seminar that the State Department runs for a month's time, etc. And then I came and joined my wife here, who had already picked out an apartment where we were to live.
And can you explain, because our listeners and our viewers are going to be really, really interested to hear, how did you found the Jewish Covenant Alliance?
Well, you know, I was hired in 2005, and it's hard to believe it's 13 years ago, to be the English editor of all the texts at the new Holocaust History Museum at Yad Vashem. And I worked on improving the English of everything written in the Holocaust History Museum. It opened at Yad Vashem for 5 months, and correcting here, correcting there, rephrasing. That in itself can be a lecture of a whole hour in itself. And after that, I realized more deeply that the Jewish people has a special mission to oppose all these idolatrous phenomena of totalitarianism. Whether it was the church in the Middle Ages with its totalitarian ideology, or the Bolsheviks, and then the Nazis, and finally today the Islamists, which I like in fact to call master jihad. We had so-called master race, and now we have so-called master jihad. But they all come with the same perspective, the same fanaticism, and see the Jew specifically as the antithesis, as the opposite, as the opponent, as the enemy of everything that they stand for. And I decided then to reestablish the concept that had already been started by Chabad with Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, the 7 Noachide laws, to reach out to the non-Jewish world with light from light to the nations, light from Zion, but to do it with a different approach, with the approach parallel to what Chabad is doing, totally non-sectarian, non-halachic, because it all relates to the original mission of Abraham when he started to win over people, win over souls, as we learn in Parashat Lech Lecha, in the portion of Lech Lecha, win over souls to belief in the one God, and also his opposition to idolatry in the most fanatical and evil way. One has only to look at Sodom and Gomorrah to realize what he confronted and what he fought against.
Aaron, your
And
comment aligns. It's
right.
It's not a proselytizing
Not at all.
movement. It's not an alliance in order to convert people or to change one's religious beliefs.
Not to change anyone's religious belief. Jews do not, for millennia, have not been involved in any active proselytizing. If someone comes to the Jewish fold,
country, it's very difficult to convert to Judaism. But
yes.
anybody from any
Right.
walk of life, any race, creed, can convert. It's a long process.
Right.
It's a difficult process. And everybody is accepted regardless of your previous faith.
Absolutely.
But with a sincere heart that you want to be Jewish, want to join the nation.
Yes.
But it's not encouraged, but it's not...
Right.
If people want to, it's not disencouraged either, but it is a long and difficult process. And interestingly enough, today in Israel, you'll see people who are Jewish who all colors and shades and sizes and...
Absolutely.
But the one nice thing which, and I think this could help, is that Judaism distinguishes itself from all other religions in which Judaism believes that you don't have to be Jewish to go to God.
Exactly.
We believe that all the nations God listens to and has a place in the next world. God just chose the Jewish people to be His chosen people.
For a special mission.
For a mission to be Or lechol hagoyim, a light unto the nations.
Light unto the nations.
This is what you are doing in your covenant.
Yes, but in terms of alerting the whole world to the fact that the Jewish people and Israel, with the restoration of Jewish sovereignty, are now in a position to be the heralds at the gate, warning the whole world about the threat of regime evil today, whether it be from Iran or from ISIS or from Hamas or Hezbollah. These are the true enemies of the entire world, and it is Israel that has the special calling, the special mission to alert the world to the threat of these ideologies. We weren't able, before the restoration of Jewish sovereignty with Israel, we weren't able to really carry out this function, because we'd just be slapped down.
Well, I must just mention, we see miraculous times.
Yes.
We see in the Feast of Tabernacles, we see thousands and thousands of non-Jews coming to Israel, coming to Jerusalem, marching in the streets of Jerusalem, unified, looking up to Zion, fulfilling the biblical prophecies.
Absolutely.
And we're going to end our wonderful interview here. We look forward to your talk tonight.
Thank
We
you.
wish you and your Jewish Covenant Alliance all the great success that you do. And we really appreciate having you this evening. A remarkable career you've had, and you still have many, many years to contribute.
Thank you.
And you're doing amazing work, and I really want to thank you for your valuable time that you've given this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure talking with you.
It's a great pleasure and honor as well.